And we're here at beautiful Branches, a veterans home here in Phenix City, Alabama, ran by Miss Modell McKenzie. And today we have 4 veterans with us who we want to talk to about their career as much as they want to share. That's all, just as much as you want to share. You don't have to. If you don't want to share something, you don't have to. And we'll start off to my left, Mr.
Hill.
Mr. Hill. What's your first name, Mr. Hill?
Michael.
Michael Hill. And Michael, would you tell us something about your military career?
I took basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana in 1968. I went to Vietnam when I was about 19, turned 20 years old. I stayed there a year. Then I come back. The Army sent me to Fort Carson, Colorado for about 5 months. Then I was sent from Fort Carson, Colorado. I went back overseas to Thailand for a little while, about 2 months. And from there I was sent from Thailand to Okinawa, Japan for about 13 months. I finally got discharged.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you for your service, Mr. Hill. But now, do you have any family,
No,
children?
My mother and daddy did. My daddy was a World War II and Korea veteran.
Okay, so we kept it in the family.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was born out there at Fort Benning, an Army brat.
Okay, you were born in Fort Benning.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, do you have any children?
No children.
No children. And then how do you like it here at Branches Veterans Home?
Good place.
It's a good place. They're taking care of you?
Yes, sir.
And I see Miss McKinley is putting up a man cave for you guys. You can play some cards and do some different games and stuff.
Ma'am. Shoot some pool? Yes, sir.
Shoot some pool, okay.
Yeah, we're going to have that open pretty soon.
Okay, great. And next we have Mr. Jesse Williams.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, tell us about your career, your service in the military.
I was at Fort Knox, Kentucky, basic training. And October, November, December, and January. And Fort Knox, Kentucky. From Fort Knox, I went to Fort Houston.
Okay, Virginia.
Yes, sir. Back on the U, prepared the U in Vietnam. And I got pulled from the class and put in South Carolina.
Okay.
And from South Carolina, they sent me to Washington, Fort Louis. I was at Pleasant for Vietnam, but they pulled me out and put me to work. There. I stayed there almost a year. Then I came back from Vietnam. I went to California. I don't know what happened after that.
Okay, that's great. Now, do you have any family still living?
Yes, sir. I had 3, so I got 2 one day.
And you are from Phenix City originally?
No, sir.
Columbus, okay, great.
BTW.
BTW,
Yes.
okay. And what school did you go to over there?
5th Avenue, 2nd Avenue, and Marshall.
Okay, 5th Avenue, 2nd Avenue in Marshall. Well, we want to thank you for your service as well. And next we have Mr.
Marvin Hudson.
Marvin Hudson.
Serial number R853366389.
All right, Mr. Hudson.
And I joined the Army, volunteered for the draft, and was drafted 16th of June, 1963.
1963, okay.
And I was inducted and was assigned to basic training at Fort Garland, Georgia.
Fort Garden, Georgia, okay.
Basic training at Fort Garland, then I took AIT at Fort Garland. Then I was deployed for 30 days leave. As you 14-day leave.
Okay.
And from there I was assigned to Fort Benning. The first incident vision, I believe it was on Kelly Hill or Muhammad Church.
All right.
And from there, they sent me to drill sergeant. If I'm not badly mistaken, he was in Carolina.
South Carolina.
Carolina.
Okay.
And I finished drill sergeant school in South Carolina. And I was deployed back to Fort Benning. And I left Fort Benning and was deployed to go to Vietnam.
Okay.
I got to Vietnam. I didn't know what the war was like till I got there.
Yes, sir.
And at that time, we was taken to the field. As you will. Let me back up here, because I done missed that Germany tour.
Okay.
I went to Germany, and then I was deployed back. And then biggest mistake I made was not re-enlisting in Germany to get permanent time. And I came back and up there where I were, I got to Vietnam. And it was that night, and all them bums and all that bomb dropping and all that. Ooh, Lord.
Yes, sir. Now,
They showed us word for word. They keep your eyes, they welcome you to Vietnam. They keep your eyes low and your morale high. You might make it.
Yes, sir.
And we was on mission. And out of our whole platoon, I was the only one strapped on a landmine, strip wire. And I remember getting into the helicopter, and they took me to the field hospital.
Yes, sir.
And from there, I was transported to a hospital in Japan. And on Veterans Day, I was deployed back to the United States. And back to the United States, we flew into, I believe, Bethesda, Maryland.
Bethesda.
From there, I was signed to a Navy hospital in Postal, Virginia. And on the 16th day, 68, I believe it was, I was medically and officially discharged to the United States Army.
Okay. Now, do you have any children?
Yes, sir.
How many?
I got 3, but can't depend on but one.
All right.
And one might ask when I was in Tuskegee.
Yes, sir.
Listen on that. Every first summer, he would make sure he would drive from South Carolina,
South Carolina.
Greenville, I believe it is,
Mm-hmm.
and take his dad to church and bring him back to the nursery.
Well, that's good. That's a great son. That's a great son. Mr. Manley, tell us something about yourself.
I was in Germany. I was in Germany. Germany.
Okay. What year?
72.
1972.
74.
74. And how did you like serving in the United States Army?
I don't like.
Okay. How do you like it here at Branches?
I love it.
You love it?
Yeah. More little kids. She take care of her.
She take care of y'all?
Yeah, she take care of her.
Well, that's good. And you know, I want to give a shout out to Miss Modell, but I also want to give a shout out.
She take care. She take care of her.
She take care of you?
Yeah.
You eat good and everything?
Be good.
All right, good, good. We want to give a shout out.
Clothes.
Fix your clothes?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
That's it? Well, we want to give a shout out to Home Depot for supporting veterans the way they do, to help do these things, to help Miss Modell do these things. Miss Modell, why don't you come around and so we can talk to you, and you can have a seat here and I'll stand up. Is there anything you would like to say to our viewers out there, Miss Modell, coming up to Veterans Day and our other veterans that we have that lives in our community?
I would just like to say that it is an honor to take care of these men. They are our heroes. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the freedom that we have right now, enjoying in this country. And this is not a job to me. It's a passion. So I have heard all their stories. You know, I've met different family members. But they have went through a lot of different things in their life. And they all have came out pretty strong. And I'm just proud of them.
And that's what I want to say. Thank you to all of you for your service. But I want you to understand that I read something somewhere that says heroes wear dog tags, and you all have wore dog tags. So we want to thank you. Is it the social worker? Yeah. All right. And Ms. McKinley, is there anything else? Also, I want to mention your husband because he's a veteran, and we want to thank him too because he's got your back.
Yes, he does. He has my back. He has these guys back here. We want to give a big shout out to Chris at Home Depot. They have been our backbone here. No matter what we want or whatever we need, Home Depot has always been there. They have helped us build this magnificent man cage for these veterans here. It's almost completed, and once it is completed, Leroy, we want you to come back because we're going to have a big grand opening.
And we'll be more than happy to. And I just want to say to Home Depot, if you're watching, thank you. We know what you do. I've been working with Home Depot for more than 11 years taking care of veterans, and they do a good job. They never say no. Starting off, would you bow your head for a moment with me, please? Father, we ask you to be with us always. We know that in these troubled times, when the world is in great turmoil, the things we ask of you may seem insignificant. But we do pray to you to ask for a better world for all. We wish to keep the fires of freedom burning brightly in the skies over this great land of ours, and we pray that we will always keep you in our hearts. Amen.
Amen.
Again, good morning.
Good morning.
Veterans and people of the Chattahoochee Valley. Let me first say that I am happy to be here on this special occasion to celebrate, educate, and honor our veterans. I want to thank Glenn Roscoe, the second Vice Commander of the Sons of the American Legion, Department of Georgia, and the American Legion Post 267, Samuel G. Cook, here in Columbus, which I am a member of, for reaching out to me and asking me to be your speaker today, or to be a speaker today. Now, before I begin my speech, I want to recognize my wife, Shirley, who is not with me today, but she has traveled with me for all of my 21 years I served in the United States Navy. I also want to recognize the members of the Sons of the American Legion, Department of Georgia, who drove over to be here on this special occasion. If there's any here, would you please stand? I also want to thank the officers of this Post 267 for inviting me here as well. Would y'all please stand? Thank you. Let me further state that I appreciate the service of the men and women in uniform serving throughout the world. And today we must include those who wear civilian clothes, for their lives are in harm's way as well. As stated previously, I spent many years in uniform serving our nation, traveling all over the world. It was a choice that I made coming out of Mount Olive High School in Fort Mitchell, Alabama. I must admit, however, that when I joined, I had not planned on making a career out of it. On this Veterans Day, our nation pauses once again in remembrance and appreciation for the men and women across all services, which have guarded our homeland and served our nation on foreign land. Our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, reservists, National Guardsmen, and veterans represent the fabric that keeps this nation strong. The golden threads of their uniform represent a shared common bond of noble service and sacrifices, preserving our nation and its future. It can never be severed, for it is woven forever in the hearts and minds of all who serve. To the fathers, mothers, our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters, our relatives and friends who are currently serving, putting their lives on the line to defend this free nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. To their spouses, children, and other family members who have shared in the sacrifice of military service, we thank you for your sacrifice and steadfast courage. Lest we never forget our fallen and their families, our nation is forever stronger because of your service and sacrifice. We give our deepest thanks appreciation, and respect. To all veterans across this force, we salute you. Veterans Day is an important but symbolic way of saying thanks. But we should insist that our elected officials produce meaningful laws and public policies that will enhance the quality of life for veterans and their families. The American Legion is dedicated to remembering the legacy of all veterans because what these men and women have done for us matters to America. It matters to the people overseas who were liberated from tyranny due to the sacrifices of our military members. From defeating communism, fascism, and imperialism, to liberating slaves, keeping the peace during the Cold War, and battling terrorism, today, veterans have accomplished remarkable things throughout our history. And veterans today are fighting an invisible war. We have medics, hospital corpsmen from the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force that are stationed in hospitals around this country fighting COVID-19. So veterans never stop serving. Ladies and gentlemen, veterans have preserved the country that we all love so much. Thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of our nation's veterans. God bless you, and God bless our veterans.
Well, actually, Marilyn and I are thrilled to be here. Not the first time we've been with 267, but it's always great to be here. And the patient one really is Marilyn, because she has put up with me for 48 years, and I know that's a challenge. And it is a pleasure to be here. It's a great day. Of course, we give a politician a microphone, especially one that likes history. You got to listen to a little bit about why this day is what it is. Veterans Day was originally Armistice Day because it commemorated the end of World War I. A lot of times we forget that. World War I was truly awful. Over 4 million Americans served in uniform. Over 2 million actually deployed to France. And when you think about the size of the Army at the beginning of World War I, about 100,000 men. When you think that within a couple of years it had grown to 4 million, that was quite a mobilization effort. But over 100,000 Americans died, over 200,000 were wounded. Great Britain, though, had 1 million dead and 1 million wounded. France had 1 million dead and 2 million wounded. The Russian Empire collapsed. The German and Ottoman empires collapsed. People would feel that whole generations died, basically, on the landscape of France, which looked like the moon. There's still a village today that was completely obliterated during World War I, and they have an election for mayor. I mean, no one actually lives there because there truly is nothing there. But they still elect a mayor just to remember the sacrifices of their grandparents' generation and what they went through. My family understands that loss, that happens when veterans don't come home. My grandmother's brother, Jesse Cummings, was one of those young men in the trenches. He was an infantryman. On October the 25th, 1918, so about 2 weeks before the war ended, he was killed in the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Up until about a year ago, well, about 2 years ago, my wife and children were the only family members that had ever been to his grave in the Meuse-Argonne cemetery. If you've never had a chance to go visit one of those cemeteries, they are inspiring because they are so well kept. But you can also see that a lot of Americans have sacrificed themselves to give us the freedoms that we have. Each of those markers, of course, is a special one. Jesse's memory is particularly special to us because he was the second son. My grandmother was the second daughter. And so each daughter was paired up with a son to make them a quilt. Well, she made Jesse a quilt, but Jesse never got to use it. So my dad and his siblings had a chance to sleep under that quilt. Unfortunately, it hadn't survived all that use. But still, that made Jesse particularly special because of that connection. Armistice Day, of course, was November the 11th. That ended the fighting in Europe, but the treaty to actually end the war was not signed until June 28, 1919, 7 months later. President Woodrow Wilson, of course, led us through that war, and when it was all done, he said, "To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of the nations." Congress passed a resolution to recognize the end of World War I, Armistice Day, on June the 4th, 1926. By then, 27 states had made November the 11th a holiday. Congress passed an act on May 13th, 1938 to make November the 11th a legal holiday known as Armistice Day. And then on June 4th, 1954, I was about a year old, changed the name to Veterans Day, so that we would remember the sacrifices and the service of all veterans, whether they served in peace or war. The aftermath, of course, of World War I did not end wars, as Americans, of course, know, and many of you know. They've served in places as far stretched as Siberia, which I love to talk about because nobody knows we actually sent 8,500 infantrymen to Siberia at the end of World War I, to places in the Caribbean. My family provided a Marine that fought in Nicaragua in between the two World Wars. These conflicts were significant for the people who served in them and raised little awareness of Americans. However, in 1939, war started in Europe, and of course, the attack on Pearl Harbor got us involved in World War II. By the end of that conflict, it was clear that our nation was a force to be reckoned with, and we were fully engaged on the world scene. American citizens have continued to serve in military forces all over the world, some small, some large. Not too long after World War II ended, the Patties of Korea, of course, summoned a lot of Americans in the 50s. Vietnam followed closely. Many of the Americans were draftees, but many were also volunteers. And even while wars dominated action in Asia, American servicemen and women served all over the world. Someone had to face the Iron Curtain in Europe and stare down the communist threat. That Cold War, even as a non-shooting war, could exact a heavy price because there were Americans who died in it. The world can be a dangerous place, and I remember looking for bombs in trash cans and fire extinguisher bombs under cars on our first tour in Germany. Now, whenever we drove outside the concern and wondered what might happen while we were shopping and when we got back in the car to see what might go on. And of course, turmoil in the Middle East began to affect us then as well. A lot of people thought once containment broke the Soviet threat, we'd have peace. But that wasn't true because there seems to always be somebody who wants to cause a problem somewhere in the world. Desert Shield and Desert Storm were my war, and that of course presaged a number of events in the Middle East, 9/11 being the big one. That has kept us busy for 20 years with soldiers and sailors, airmen, and Marines, men and women, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Marine barracks in Beirut, of course, must be remembered as the USS Cole and the embassies in Africa that got blown up right about the same time as 9/11. So these present-day veterans, I think, deserve a special threat because many of those who served after 9/11, they joined the service knowing we were in war. Our youngest daughter served in Afghanistan with a Stryker brigade, so we understand the tension that can bring to a family when you have a child deployed overseas. So many of you understand that because you served in the War on Terror or you had family members who did. Now for this day and any day around it, I encourage you to visit a historic site and take your children and grandchildren to it so that they remember why we have the freedoms that we have. Motton Field is nearby. It's less than an hour away. The Tuskegee Airmen were there. There's a great setup, run by the National Park Service. It's been closed some during COVID, but it'll reopen soon. Marilyn and I were there for the original official dedication of it. And truly, it's an inspirational spot to be. If you go to the Infantry Museum, the first soldier on the ramp is an African American to remind us that the 1st Rhode Island Infantry were slaves fighting for their freedom in the Revolutionary War. And Washington picked them to make the assault on that redoubt that you see when you first start up the last 100 yards. You get to Pointe du Hoc, 225 Rangers land there. At the end of 3 days, only 90 of them are actually able to fight. The rest are all killed or so severely wounded they can't move. And of course, at the top of the ramp, you see a Bradley infantry fighting vehicle that reminds us of the loving sacrifice of one soldier for another. Specialist James Powell drove that track that day, and he volunteered to drive it even though he only had 1 day left in country, and his friend was the normal driver and was sick. So Powell took his place and then was killed when he rolled over an IED. You also might have a chance to learn about a Vietnam veteran if you're walking through the Infantry Museum that saved 2,687 people on 9/11 at the World Trade Center. Retired Army Reserve Colonel Rick Perscorla was the Vice President for Security for Morgan Stanley Dingwitter in the South Tower of the World Trade Center. He had received a Silver Star at Landing Zone X-ray. When the plane hit the North Tower, he figured we were in a fight right then. and ordered everybody in Morgan Stanley out of the South Tower. So they were actually moving when the plane hit. Then, as I mentioned, he got 2,687 people out. Then he turned around and started back up because he knew he was missing a few people on the floors above him. He figured somebody had to go, and so he did it. Dying of prostate cancer at the time, didn't feel good, just a tough old soldier who wouldn't quit. And a naturalized American citizen, actually born in England. Thankfully, there are several things inside the museum to remind you about him, but I always like to tell his story because he saved over 2,000 people, and he was just a tough old soldier who wouldn't stop. The next time you drive by the H.A. McClung Memorial Stadium, remember that it was originally named Memorial Stadium to remember veterans from World War I. Pretty soon we'll have a historic marker to go up there that will include a listing of the 43 Chattahoochee Valley, actually Muskogee County residents who died in World War I, and 7 of them were African American. So I look forward to the day we have that statue back up to remember that. And of course remember one of my favorite veterans, Eugene Bullard. In case you don't know his history, the first African American to fly a military plane in combat. Actually flew for France, but he's from Columbus, Georgia. He grew up in a small shack real close to Jordan City. Next time you drive by Buckeyes and Cole, look left, because it was somewhere right down in that area where we have affordable housing now today. Soldiers have sacrificed a lot since 9/11. If you go to the Global War on Terror Memorial Anti-Infantry Museum, you'll find 7,041 names there. Next September, 13 more will be added since they were killed at the Kabul airport. Over 50,000 have been wounded. As long as we have people like that, though, America will be strong. So don't forget all of the young men and women that served after 9/11 in particular, because they volunteered to go knowing that they were going to be in a fight. Remember Sergeant First Class Paul Smith from the 3rd Brigade who died saving his platoon. Specialist Ross McGinnis, who sacrificed himself inside a Humvee when he jumped on a hand grenade. Staff Sergeant Salvador Junta, who charged through an ambush to save his friend who was being dragged off to be tortured. And Staff Sergeant Clinton Romachet, who rallied the soldiers at Combat Outpost Keating because he wasn't going to let his home go down without a fight. And of course the SEAL team led by Navy Lieutenant Michael Murphy, made famous in the movie and book The Lone Survivor. And one soldier I like to remember, and I don't have any idea what his name is. I was flipping through a magazine, I think it was the U.S. News and World Report several years ago, and it was a scene in Baghdad where a bomb had blown up, and you see the crowd running to the right in the photo. And you see a young American soldier turning to his right, my left, looking at the photo, into the fight. And that reminds me of what soldiers do. Civilians may run away, but soldiers go into the dangerous spot to try to protect. So I have no idea who that young kid was. I wish I knew him. But he reminds me of what soldiers do, and it makes me so proud of him. And also remember a service that we sometimes forget, the U.S. Coast Guard. One of the privileges that Marilyn and I had when we were at the Naval War College, had a chance to meet some Coast Guards when they were closeted or stationed nearby. The next time you see a hurricane go up the coast of New England, realize that there are Coast Guardsmen that get inside a little boat that's about 30 feet long, that's designed to actually sink. Basically, it'll roll over in the waves. The guys strap themselves in with a long harness so they won't fall off the little boat, and they go out there to rescue the knuckleheads that go out there in a hurricane in some other kind of boat. So how many of us would go out there and do that? And we have Coast Guardsmen that do that all the time. You know, so we need to remember those guys because they are truly amazing patriots because they will risk their lives against Mother Nature, and there's no way to stop it. You just got to try to figure out how to endure it. Today we honor the military service of all those who served, whether peace or war, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard. So it's good that we remember all those veterans. And of course, people in this area, I think, know that more than many, thanks to Fort Benning and all of those who have served here and turned around and come back. And as a veteran myself, of course, I remember those sacrifices and all of you. Cannot thank you all enough for what you've done. I'm proud to have served with you, proud to serve here now with you, to be with you, and have a chance to talk a little bit about Veterans Day and Armistice Day. So God bless all veterans and their families in the United States of America and Post 267 for having this ceremony in 333, giving all of us a chance to be here with you. Thank you.
Welcome to another episode of the Veterans View Show. And today we are here in Columbus, Georgia on Casita Road at Post 267 for our Veterans Day program. Today we have with us the post commander for Post 267, And would you state your name, please, sir?
Ernest Bachman.
Ernest Barkwood. And we have the post commander of Post 333. State your name, please,
I am
ma'am.
Vicki Dykes. I am commander of Eddie L. Roberts, American Legion Post 333.
And these two posts joined together to put on this program today. I was the speaker today, and the guest speaker today was Colonel John House, who is councilman of
District 10 in Muskogee County.
Muskogee County. And we also have the secretary, or we should say adjutant. Well, she's the adjutant for Post 333, and she's the secretary for the Chattahoochee Valley Veterans Organization, Hazel Taylor. Now, we'll start with Colonel House. Would you give us a couple of remarks about today's program?
It was great to have a chance to be here and remember Veterans Day that began long ago as Armistice Day that ended World War I. But in 1954, Congress changed it to Veterans Day to remember the sacrifices of all veterans that have served, whether in peace or war. So it was great to have a chance to be here. And also, I'm a member of Post 333.
Yes, sir.
So I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to be here with Post 333.
Thank you for bringing that up. And Commander?
Yes, sir. My father was a World War II vet, and was the reason I joined the military. And I just wanted my dad to be proud of me and my service, because I was proud of him and his service, because it made a difference in our family. It brought us from poverty to, where we could sustain ourselves.
Yes, sir.
And I'm honored to be a member of this post and to be a veteran.
Thank you, sir. And Commander Dyke?
Of course, my father was also a veteran too. He served in World War II. He died in 2001. And of course, I have two brothers that, along with me, have decided to keep up my father's name. But I am so happy to be a part of this program, and I appreciate Post 267 inviting us. It was really a joy and a pleasure to be a part of this ceremony.
And I just want to say in closing that these men and women that you see up here today, not only have they served their country in the military, but they're still serving their country, whereas working as civilians and every other aspect that they can. And the work that we do in volunteering to take care of veterans across the Chattahoochee Valley is awesome. So I just want to thank you for your active duty service, and I want to thank you for the continuing things that you do for the community here in the Chattahoochee Valley, because I just can't say Columbus, because the outreach is across the river and across the county line and other counties here in Georgia. Thank you again, and we will see you later on at another show. This is a continuation of covering Veterans Day in the Chattahoochee Valley.
Thank you very much, Sam. Let me thank American Legion Post 35 for inviting me to spend a few minutes with you today as we remember and celebrate National Vietnam War Veterans Day. I can remember very, very vividly when the Vietnam War started. I was in high school. I can remember very vividly how the country was torn apart in the 60s over the war in Vietnam. I remember very vividly how in 1968, the country literally was at arms with one another. College students were shot on college campus protesting the war, protesting civil rights. Military personnel, as you have heard, our soldiers, our airmen, our Marines were not held in high esteem. They were shunned, they were cursed. I reflect on after Desert Storm, riding on an airplane and having the pilot come on the public address system and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for flying with us today, but we want you to take a moment to thank the veterans that we have, the armed services members that we have on this flight for their service." And the plane erupted in applause. that's the difference between the legacy that Vietnam veterans created so that we could finally, as a country, come together and appreciate the service of those people who paid the price for the freedoms that we enjoy. For me to reflect on Vietnam is a very emotional experience. I guess must consider myself a Vietnam hero veteran as opposed to having been a Vietnam veteran. But let me just put it in a very, very personal context. When I think about Vietnam, there are 4 people that were dear to me that I have to mention. 2 of them are alive and 2 of them are deceased. When I was in 10th grade, I was a senior that was in my 10th grade Spanish class. His name was Oliver Beaton. He graduated from high school. He had a twin sister whose name was Olivette Beaton. He was drafted into the Army and went right off to Vietnam. Before I graduated 2 years later, Oliver Beaton was back in Mobile, Alabama, to be funeralized as a casualty from Vietnam. Then there was my friend in college. His name was Carl Isaacs. At Morehouse College, 64 to 68, there were great debates on campus, as were debates in the country. On the Vietnam War, Dr. Martin Luther King took a very, very principled stand against the war. And so there was a lot of chatter and a lot of discussion about it. One of my schoolmates by the name of Carl Isaacs, regular guy, belonged to Omega Psi Phi fraternity, party guy, was drafted right out of college, and he went to Vietnam. The next year, word came back to the campus that Carl Isaacs had been killed in Vietnam. Fast forward, 1970s, mid-1970s, I am here in Columbus, Georgia, practicing law. In the Commerce Building, in the basement of that building was a nightclub called the Turning Point. Some of you may or may not know about the Turning Point, but it was the place where smart people meet. That was the motto. Great happy hours, great DJs, great time. Well, my law office was on the 5th floor of that building. My law partner, Mary Buckner, left work earlier and went down to the Turning Point. And she called me on the phone and said, "Are you still in the office?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, there's a friend of yours who said he went to college with you, who was down here, and he wants to make sure that he gets to see you before you leave." I said, "Well, who is he?" She said, "His name is Carl Isaacs." I said, "No, it couldn't be Carl Isaacs. Carl Isaacs was killed in Vietnam." She said, "Well, that's what he said his name was." So I hurried and finished what I was doing. I went down to the Turning Point. I walked in, I looked at the bar. Sure enough, sitting at the end of the bar was the Carl Isaacs that I had known in college. And I really looked at him in great surprise, and he broke out in a laugh. He says, "Yeah, I know you thought I was dead." He said, "Well," I said, "Well, how did that happen?" He was at a bunker. A round came in, hit the bunker, knocked him and his bunker mate out of the bunker. Their dog tags came apart. They were both unconscious. His buddy died. He was evacuated. He recovered. Well, his dog tag was put on the other guy. I'm sorry, his dog tag, was put on the other guy who died. So the Pentagon notified his family that he was a casualty. Casualty assistance folks went to do their duty. Carl went to the hospital in Germany. He recovered. After his recovery, they allowed him to go home. So he decided he wanted to surprise his mother. So he flies in and he goes to Opelika, Florida. And he makes sure that he gets off the bus a block from his house. And he walks through the neighborhood and he walks up to his house. And his mother is out in the yard working on a flower bed with a hoe. And he walks up and she looks up at him and she continues to hoe. He says, Mom. And she looks up and she continues to hoe. He said, Mom, what are you going to do? She picks up some dirt and she throws it at him. When it bounces off, she runs and she tackles him. She too thought that he was deceased. She had received the survivor's benefits, and then she told him about the funeral that they had. All of the friends that had come and had cried at his funeral, but how God had truly blessed her to allow him to return. That's my Carl Isaacs story about Vietnam. In 1965, I was in my first year of college. I had really gotten involved in this debate about Vietnam. And there was one of my neighbors who was a mentor for me. His name was Thaddeus Williams. He was 4 or 5 years older. He was a graduate of Tuskegee. He had joined the military, received a commission, became a Tuskegee airman, and he was a pilot for the Army doing reconnaissance. He was very, very proud of what he did. Very gung-ho, if you will. Well, Thaddeus was home in Mobile. This was during the Christmas holidays. He was the guy that taught me how to hold a tennis racket. The first person I ever saw with a slide rule. He impressed me with his smarts as well as with his athletic ability. He played the trombone in the band. And Thaddeus was just the kind of guy that you looked up to and you loved. So I had to engage Thaddeus during the Christmas holidays. I went to take the garbage can out and he was walking down the street from one of his classmates' house. And Thaddeus and I started a conversation under the street light in front of my house about Vietnam and about the war and about the role of our military. And Thaddeus was truly patriotic. And he said that he couldn't wait to get back. He had come home in October because his mother had passed. He came home for her funeral. And as soon as the Christmas holidays were over, 1st of January, he returned to Vietnam. 2 weeks later, we're in the neighborhood. I'd returned to Atlanta to school, but the neighborhood got the news that Thaddeus had been shot down in his plane in Vietnam. That was not the worst news. The worst news was that his remains had not been recovered. That haunted me, the thought of my friend who was so patriotic and who was so supportive of the war, was killed in the war, died for his country, yet his remains were not repatriated. Fast forward, I run for the General Assembly, serve in the House, serve in the State Senate. I run for Congress in 1992, elected to Congress. I get to serve on the Agriculture Committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee, and then I had an opportunity to get a seat on the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. That was in the late 1990s. By that time, President Clinton was elected, and they created a reconciliation commission with the former enemies, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, and that was an agreement that they would allow the repatriation of remains of Vietnam vet soldiers and airmen that were missing in action or whose remains were still there. So they created a joint task force for Fuller County, made up of representatives from all those countries, and they allowed the United States to lead that effort to search for the remains of our soldiers who were left and who perished in the Vietnam War, whose remains did not come. There were some who were prisoners of war, who were MIA. And of course, that undertaking came under the jurisdiction, oversight of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Once I found that out, remembering my friend, Thaddeus Williams, I asked the chairman, I said, what can I do to go and to try to repatriate the remains and learn what has happened to our POWs and our MIAs? And I found out that we could have a congressional delegation shipped and go and look at what they were doing with that joint task force. And so I asked to do that, and I was granted the authority to be a congressional delegation of one, along with the counsel for the Intelligence Committee. And so in late 1998, we took a trip to Southeast Asia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. And I went with the commission to meet with the authorities in each of those countries with a list of MIAs from Alabama, which was my home state, and Georgia, the state that I represented. And I wanted to present that list to try to locate, repatriate any of those remains that might be there. The Joint Task Force was exhausting every possible effort to bring our soldiers back. And so I went on a survey with them on one particular day, and we were in Laos. It was rough terrain, and we had to almost rappel down the side of a ravine into a creek bed. It's a beautiful, serene situation. But the recovery team had what looked like screens, and they were digging dirt with small implements and sifting the dirt for bone fragments, metal fragments, army medals, or any insignia that might indicate that the remains of a soldier might be there. It took about 3 minutes for me to rappel with the group down to this area. It took me about 20 minutes to come back up and ask for oxygen. But this was the site where a reconnaissance unit of our United States Army had been attacked by Vietnamese regulars and had been wiped out. There was one NCO there who was wounded. He was so badly wounded that when the helicopter came to extract his buddies, he couldn't go, so his remains were left there, and for the rest of the war, the United States had no access to that point. They found this gentleman's remains in that pit. I got to go to the lab in Hawaii where they had bone fragments, and they had decided to use DNA to try to identify. I walked through and saw the skeletons and bone fragments as they meticulously tried to identify who these bone fragments and skeletons belong to. I presented my list to the officials in Vietnam, Laos, from Georgia, from Alabama. No positive response. I got back to Georgia, got back to Washington, and I got a call about 2 months later. The call was that they had gotten DNA from Thaddeus Williams' brother, Eldridge, with whom I grew up, and they were able to confirm the identity of his remains by virtue of that DNA. And he had a photographer who was on that flight, whose job it was to take pictures as they flew over. His remains were also identified. As it turns out, Thaddeus's mother and father, his mother, of course, had passed away, but his father, his sister, and brother had been in touch with the family of his photographer, who was from Pennsylvania. Thaddeus was black, this fellow was white, but they were a team for that reconnaissance. Those families had been communicating with each other from 1965 up until 1999, and they felt a kinship. That is, his father passed. The mother and father of the photographer passed. So the sisters and brothers of those two soldiers continued to communicate. Then when they were notified that Thaddeus' remains had been found, and their brother's remains had been found, the Pentagon celebrated, brought the remains back, and they planned a funeral for the two of them at Arlington. Eldridge Williams, Thaddeus' brother, called me and asked me if I would give the eulogy for Thaddeus at that funeral. An Army chaplain was designated to do the eulogy for the other soldier. The night before, the Pentagon arranged for those two families to get together for dinner. That was the first time that they had met each other during that almost 30 years since their sons or their brothers had gone missing. They were able to bond once again, although the parents had died, the siblings bonded. The next day we had the funeral, and I spoke about that. We grew up in a community called Creek Circle. And as in many communities back then, people knew one another, they lived from one house to the other, and the children grew up together. So there were a number of people from Mobile who came to the Arlington Cemetery for that funeral. People who had lived in that Creek Circle community. Some were famous. Fred Wesley, who played trombone for the James Brown Band, was the neighbor. He and Thaddeus played trombone together in the high school band. Fred's brother and sister, who grew up across the street from Thad, they were there from California, from Colorado. And then there were Mr. and Mrs. Etheridge, who lived 2 doors down, who happened to be living in Washington, D.C. Mr. Etheridge having retired from the National Education Association. They were there. And of course, I was there to speak. And what I talked about, Creek Circle, is the fact that our circle had been broken when Thaddeus was shot down. And that circle remained broken as long as Thaddeus was not repatriated. But that finally the circle had been completed by his return. Thaddeus, like many of the millions that served in Vietnam, was dedicated. And he gave it his all. He paid the ultimate price. But so many in this country did not appreciate the sacrifice that Thaddeus made. The bulk of I think there's some 850,000 or fewer now Vietnam veterans who are still alive. That's 1/3 of the total number that served. They were not appreciated. Thaddeus was not appreciated. But they served nevertheless. The majority of those who served in Vietnam did not volunteer. They were drafted. They were told that they had to go. And they did. They did their duty. We owe so much in this country to the men and the women who paid the price for the freedoms that we enjoy, that we take for granted every day. And so as we celebrate National Vietnam War Veterans Day, we have a lot to thank Vietnam vets for. If it were not for Vietnam vets, the Veterans Administration would not be as responsive as it is to the illnesses and the diseases that are a consequence of military service. It's because Vietnam veterans fought hard and consistently and continuously for years to get recognition of the damage of being exposed to Agent Orange. Even today, I'm representing veterans who had children with spina bifida as a result of being exposed to Agent Orange. And I could go on and on with the developments and the improvements that have come to the VA because Vietnam veterans took a stand and continue to fight. So, for those who are currently serving, you stand on the shoulders of Vietnam vets, just as they stood on the shoulders of those who served in all of the wars before. But the one thing that you all have in common is that you served and you sacrificed for your country. Our country owes you a debt of gratitude that we could never, ever repay. As your representative in Congress, I am convinced that when you stepped up and took that oath, raised your hand, and swore to defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that our country wrote a check to you for benefits and support because of the sacrifice you made. And as your congressman, I have committed myself to make sure that that check never, ever comes back to our insufficient funds. We're going to do everything that we can, and our country should do everything that we can to support our veterans. And today, we celebrate and we remember Vietnam War Veterans Day. One other person I want to mention, his name was Douglas Pete Peterson. He is the other one who is still alive today. I think he's 84 years old. Pete Peterson was an Air Force pilot, and his plane was shot down in 1966. Pete was held prisoner in the Hanoi Hilton, along with John McCain. He received a Purple Heart, Silver Star, Presidential Citizens Medal, and he retired as a colonel. He then ran for Congress, representing a district in Florida. I had the good fortune during my first couple of terms in Congress to serve with Pete Peterson on the Agriculture Committee and on the Veterans Affairs Committee. Pete retired from Congress after President Clinton was elected, and he petitioned President Clinton to give him an appointment. And guess what his appointment was? He wanted to be the ambassador to the Republic of Vietnam. President Clinton gave him that appointment. And when I went over to look for Thad, I was able to be greeted by my friend in Congress, then Ambassador Pete Peterson. Pete was not bitter. He had been shot down, he had been subjected to torture while he was a POW. But he believed in reconciliation. His wife had passed away, and so when he went back to Vietnam, he ended up marrying a Vietnamese woman. And as we walked through the streets of Hanoi and met with officials there in Hanoi, Pete Peterson was beloved and treated like a national hero by the Vietnamese people. The way that history allowed those attitudes to be changed, reconciled, because of what America stands for, and because of the sacrifice of people like Pete Peterson, is what makes America the greatest country on the face of the earth. It makes me proud to be able to come here, American Legion Post 35, to say thank you to our veterans, all of our veterans, but thank you especially today to our Vietnam War veterans. Happy Vietnam War Veterans Day to all.
Welcome back to the second part of Veterans View here at Branches Veterans Home. And we're here in front of the home with Miss Modell McKenzie and her daughter. And what's your name? Elin. So we are here today on Veterans Day and showing you what she is doing, her and her staff, for the veterans in Branches Veterans Home. Miss McKenzie, would you like to say something to the veterans out there?
First of all, I would like to say thank you guys for your service. I hope you are having a wonderful day, and God bless. Thank you for everything you've done for us.
And young ladies, what would you like to say?
Would
you like to say thank you to your veterans, especially your father,
yes.
for serving?
Thank you for serving our country.
Okay, and now we'll move on and go look at some of the things and show some of all the food that's being done and things for the veterans, and the new man cave that they are working on for the
Grand
veterans.
opening today, 4:30.
Okay, thank you, and we'll go back there now.
Because it is Veterans Day, we want to make sure that we take a moment out to recognize those who serve. So right now we'll have Mr. Leroy Davis come up and speak a second about our veterans.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to say a few words about Veterans Day, and then I'll say some things about what I do with the Veterans Treatment Court, with the judges, also with the drug court and the mental health court. So we're doing a lot of things here in this county that's going on around the country that putting people in treatment rather than putting them in jail. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to look at is our leadership and what they are doing in our court system. Today, Veterans Day, we pause to pay tribute to current and former service members of the United States Armed Forces. It is a day to recognize all those who answered the call to defend our country. As John F. Kennedy stated, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. Today and every day, let us not only remember the sacrifices of those who have served, but honor them through acts of kindness. No matter how you choose to mark this occasion, find a way to say thank you to some of the more than 18 million veterans in our country, and consider supporting one of the many organizations working to assist our veterans at home. I like to say, veterans, know what your sphere of influence is. That's your dollar and your vote. If the businesses don't support you, then keep your dollar in your pocket. Let's support our judges. We have the greatest judges, I think, in the state of Alabama. They are considerate. They try to put people in treatment, vice in jail. And that's the most important thing to me, as to work as a senior mentor or the mentor coordinator for Veterans Court and to help with the other courts when I can. Thank you.
Amen.
All right, everyone, may I have your attention? May I have your attention, please? We're not going to talk about the safety tools or anything like that. This is a special day. As you all know, this is Veterans Day. And y'all know how we do it on second shift. This thing's serious. We're going to talk about the sacrifices of men and women that serve in the armed forces. Okay? It's a lot of us that work here. Okay? But before we work here, we work at defending our country and other countries abroad. Okay? We serve. All right? So, for the people, young men and young women that hear your name, please come to the front. Please come to the front. Okay? All I ask is you cut off your electronic devices, please. Turn off your electronic devices for filming purposes. We just want things to be quiet for filming purposes. Okay. So when you hear your name, please come to the front.
Kev, you want me to say something first, or you gonna do this first?
I'm sorry, y'all. We have a special guest tonight, and I do apologize. He's not my guest. He's like a brother to me, because we've done a lot in the community. He's my neighbor, my good friend, Mr. Leroy Davis Jr.
Good evening. Can all y'all hear me? Yes. I'm born and raised right here in Russell County, Alabama. I joined the United States Navy in 1975, and I did 21 years. No better place to be than in the armed forces of the United States. And for those of you who have served, I thank you for your service on this Veterans Day. For those of you who have parents, uncles, aunts, cousins that serve, we thank you for their service as well. I do a lot of things here in Russell County, Alabama. I work with the court system. I am the senior mentor or the mentor coordinator for Veterans Treatment Court. So if you get in trouble as a veteran, I'm one of the people you're going to see, because I'm going to pull you out of the regular court, if you're worthy, and put you in the Veterans Treatment Court. We have went to a system now that we believe in treatment over incarceration. So we try to get you treatment. And that's the same thing if you go in the drug court, if you go in the mental health court, any of our courts, we try to get treatment before we get incarceration. Now, because I say that, I don't want you to go out there and get in trouble and say, well, Mr. Davis said I can get treatment. No, it don't work like that. Okay, so don't go out there and get in trouble. But I want to thank you for your service. I also help veterans get their benefits. So even though you work in here, you still may qualify for benefits. So we'll help you do your application to get benefits. Wouldn't it be great to have 2 checks coming in? One from Alitrade and one from the Department of Veteran Affairs? It'd be great, wouldn't it? So we'll help you do that too. So, but you're gonna have to do something on your part and contact me later. You can get my information from Kevin or Miss Deborah over there, and then we'll help you with that as well. We're all around this community. We do a lot of things. And one thing I want to say right now to the veterans before Kevin starts his award is that your sphere of influence, not just veterans, but everybody in this room, your sphere of influence is your dollar, right? If people don't support what you do, as far as like me, veterans, taking care of veterans, don't spend your money with them. That's your sphere of influence. But what's the top sphere of influence other than your dollar? Can anybody tell me that? Your vote. Your vote is the thing that counts. The people who are in office, if you didn't vote, you can't complain. You can't complain. So look at the ballot, study it, research before you vote on anybody, and make sure that they're going to take care of your interests, what you're interested in. Okay? That's it, Kevin. We can go.
Once again, when your name is called, please come to the front for this presentation. Ms. Marcella Kennedy.
Thank you for your service. What branch?
Army.
Army? Look over there at that camera and smile and say, I was in the United States Army.
I was in the United States Army.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
Artemis Johnson.
Thank you.
Artemis Johnson. Julius Holston, United States Marines.
How you doing, sir? Can you sing that song?
I'm a Marine, don't smile.
But you sang?
We don't fight.
Oh,
We just fight.
okay, let's fight and sing. What's the Marine Corps hymn? No, you both know it. All right, thank you for your service.
Stephen Dempsey.
Hey.
James Chapman.
Hey, still ready to fight, ain't you? Smile at that camera right there, James. Good. You good.
James White.
He's in the parking lot.
Rodell Ellis. United States Army.
Thank you for your service. Look at that camera there and smile. Special Forces? What you do?
Mechanic.
Mechanic. All right, great.
Glenn Whitehead. United States Army.
You make sure you stay up front so you can get yours. Smile. Thank you.
Joseph Nelson. United States Army.
All right. Smile for the camera. All right, thank you.
James West.
The Wild Wild West. How you doing, Mr. West?
Good.
What branch?
Army.
Army. Smile at the camera. Okay.
Douglas Paris.
How you going? Doing great. Smile at that camera. All right. Sit over there. Both of them.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Derek Williams, United States Navy.
Hey. That's a Navy guy. Off we go into the wild blue. That's Air Force. That's Mr. Williams.
Sing it, Derek.
We sang Anchors Away. All right.
Sergeant Major Luis Burrell. United States Army.
Come on right here. Come on over here on this side. This is our Green Beret here. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I want to say something.
Go ahead.
veterans is one every American, every vet in United States and other foreign countries where we serve, we want. When we go to VA, the doctor asking us and everybody, what you want for life? What we want is for this country love us the same way we love them. We do everything we got. One. For all the vets in the whole entire world, honor them. They deserve it. We live free for them.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. This next one is for somebody you all know and love, Kevin Williams. Speak.
Aim high.
Way to go.
And now I would like to present this award or this certificate to a good friend, a good working buddy. I've learned a lot from this veteran about veterans. And this is special to me because, again, I learned so much from this person. So I appreciate this person from the bottom of my heart, my good friend and honorable veteran, Mr. Leroy Davis Jr.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Y'all see that? I got one too. You got one for Deborah, I know, because you did.
Deborah did hers this morning.
Oh, okay. Great, great.
So once again, we sacrificed, our families sacrificed, which is really important. We couldn't do any of this without the families of veterans. So in remembrance to the veterans and the family of veterans, we thank them also. So I want to close and say that Alitrade is a special place. Okay, we have over 50 veterans in this building, first and second shift, who serve. So if you ever meet one, talk to one, you will know that they're veteran, that they are veteran. Once you're a veteran, you're still a veteran. So on behalf of Alitrade, I want to say thank you to the veterans and the veterans family. Mr. Leroy Davis, I appreciate it. I thank you, my brother.
Thank you
for coming to help us out here. If you want to know more about Leroy, Mr. Leroy Davis, he has a YouTube channel. Take it away.
We're on Channel 7 here in Phoenix City on Beam Television, and then we're on YouTube, Beam TV, YouTube, and it's called The Veterans View Show. So you can watch it. What's going on right here, right now, you'll be able to watch it on YouTube and on Channel 7, Beam TV. And I just want to tell you guys, you are a family. You are employee-owned. So take pride in it and work hard for it. And I'm going to do like Martin Lawrence do. You see, I got one too. Woo! Woo!
This concludes our veterans presentation of 2021. So I want to thank you, thank Mr. Davis, Ms. Deborah Taylor, for all she does also. She's a veteran also. Ms. Deborah.